Hello everyone, welcome to Zinc Tennis Vlogs. Today we're going to talk a little bit about like match review, what the perspective is from the player, what the perspective is from the coach. And just Ben and I have been going and watching some matches from, our students, and just we want to talk a little bit about, how to be self-reflective, and I call it the ability to receive, right? It's like when somebody is, criticizing or constructive critiquing me, right? My immediate reaction is to go into defensive and say, I'm not doing that. Just almost like the opposite. Like, I'm not doing that, and I think one of the things is that could be some of the coach's voice, and I think one of the things that I have when I'm coaching is that I put people in this situation where they feel like they have to be defensive. So that might be my deal coaching. But one of the things we want to talk about is just the ability to receive information and then go analyze whether that information is right or wrong. So let's talk a little bit about just player A, you're coaching them and they just come off the court and you're giving them some information about that match. So give us a little bit of what that looks like, and A, what it looks like, and then B, what you might want to see. I think that's huge.
I think sometimes, like, as a player, like, we all have different emotions that are going through our mind, especially after a loss. And so we might not be in, so I like to give my players personally, I like to give them a little bit of time to just kind of reflect on their own. I think a lot of times what happens is when we go out and play a match, we care a lot, and then what happens is but along with that, our ego cares a lot too. So it's almost like when we lose, it's a hit to our ego. And then when we start to analyze that, I feel like it becomes like what you said, like very defensive, and especially as a coach, when you see things from the outside, it's tough to, because they need to be changed, right? Like things that need to be changed. So it's not things that were necessarily done well. So I think for me personally, as a player, now I would struggle with this as a teen when I was a teen, is kind of understanding, okay, I've lost the match, so there were obviously things that I could do differently, and instead of being reflective on what my strokes might have done and what might have let me down, is just being okay, like I'd like to know what I could do better. I think that would be the first step, is to say, okay, like I understand that I didn't do something right in this match. So, like, obviously the first person I was going to ask is somebody that's been there and watching it, and I think that that's the toughest part, is somebody that from the outside, maybe not so objective. A coach is probably a little more objective than a family member, but you never know. But just trying to say, okay, what did I do, and what can I do to change, and understand that it's maybe not. In the analysis of it all, is trying not to be so emotional about it, and understand that they're trying to be negative with you as a person, but instead understanding that it's for your own benefit and getting you better. And I think that's the toughest part sometimes, about criticism, is sometimes it's tough to not take it emotionally inside, but instead it's a little bit tougher. So I think that's one of the things for me, is kind of like we said, being open to it and wanting that information. So along with that, like, as the player continues on, the second part is, okay, how fast can they bring it back out and say, okay, that was information in, now I need to show that I've got that information out. And can you share a little bit about what you know about people internalizing that information? I think that's a tough one, is to get that in now.
So I think that the one biggest thing, and we know as coaches, right, because we travel with the kids and we see the kids, and so the first thing that we see is that the defense mechanism comes up, which Ben just talked about. The defense mechanism comes up, and so I think it's really kind of being self-reflective. And I think the biggest thing, my biggest successes have come from, let's start to film the matches, and that's another thing that we can talk about here. Like, we're doing this thing called match analysis, where you can send in a film of your match, and we can analyze it on a screen share and analyze it. I just don't think there's anything better. So when we can actually show the student what they're doing, and so there's no objective, well, I wasn't doing this or I was doing this. So number one, we got to figure out what's the problem. But then then the next step is that how do we get the problem fixed? And I think this is the biggest thing that my focus and Ben's focus is on, is that there are a lot of coaches out there, and again, this isn't any bust on other coaches. This is just what we're seeing. There's a lot of coaches out there that are analyzing the problem. Okay, here is the problem, but then what is the fix? What is the fix? And I think, again, the you have to break down what's going on. Is it, in our last vlog, one of the things that we talked about is the reset. So if the reset isn't happening, then that affects their feet to get set for the next ball. They didn't recognize what ball they hit. So they've got to be able to receive the information that we're giving them. And then Ben and I and your coaches out there have to have the tools to break this down to say, okay, now how do we fix the problem? Because one of the things that I'm going through this period in my life where you can tell me what the problem is all day long, but if somebody doesn't tell me how to, solve it, or I can't figure out how to solve it, it just becomes a frustrating circle, right? So I want to be able to figure out how to solve it. And I think that's where we are really getting some major success, is we're figuring out how to solve these issues that your son and daughter are having out on the tennis court. They're struggling with, whether it's pressure or dealing with things or not playing smart match or, not moving their feet, looking lazy on the court, all these things. I think that the student doesn't necessarily know, and we got to show them, and then we got to break it down. So I think, learning, how to receive the information, and then learning how to, okay, these are the problems, and I'm open to that. I'm open to, okay, these are the problems. Okay, coach, how do I solve these? And be open to have the ability to solve them. Yeah. And once we get to that spot and we can start to solve these things, we're going to see the tennis players start to get better. And I don't know about you, Ben, but I find that all these people are coming into town, and I'm watching all these kids at the tournaments that we're watching, and I very rarely see somebody just get a lot better. I just don't see it, right? I don't see people, and the reason I think we're not seeing these kids get, when I say a lot better, sure, they're going like this, but I think that they could be on this different trajectory if they would just do what we're talking about, is start to really analyze and listen and open the gates and say, yes, bring the information in, and now I'm ready to work on, and what is the plan? Yeah,
and then you just said it for sure, I think, is the plan. I think, and so even some people can come up with a solution. Oh, you need to go do this. That's the one thing we've been talking about all the time is go work hard. Yeah. What does that mean? I don't really know what that means. Hey, you need to make the ball. What does that mean? We talk about, making a recipe. You need to have the ingredients, but you also need to have the step-by-step process. And that's the one thing that we like to show our students and everybody that's been coming in and people we've been working with is, okay, here are the steps to improve this. And then being able to go out and do it over and over and over again. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle is the recipe. If I make the world's best cookie, that recipe isn't changing. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that you've got to realize is that if the recipe's there, then it has to go out and we have to work on it every single day to make it better. And I think that's where we get lost in the shuffle a little bit too, is finding the recipe and then executing it day in and day out. Because that to me, a lot of times, hitting serve for 20 minutes a day, that's the recipe, but how many kids actually go out and hit serve for 20 minutes a day? It gets boring, it's repetitive, I'm not really enjoying it. But those are the things that we see that get players a lot better, is understanding what that recipe is. And we feel like we have a good recipe. To be honest, we have a great recipe, and I think that's something that we can share, and we want to share with everyone in our audience. So I think that being solution oriented and finding out that plan and then being able to execute on that plan is the hardest thing. And because we find that too, is the execution is there 1 or 2 days, but over the long period of time, that's where it really has to change. And once that happens, you are going to see that trajectory go from this slow slope to a much steeper one. I think.
I totally agree. So I want to leave you guys with this question. All right, I want to leave you with this question: do you have a son or daughter, or are you the player that's listening to this, that there's something wrong in your game? That there's something wrong, and you watched your son or daughter practice last week, and they played amazing. They got to the tournament, and they just didn't play to their potential. And this is happening over and over and over again. And you're getting coached, and you're leaving, your son or daughter off with a coach, and for some reason this isn't getting fixed. Are you frustrated? I come from a different angle, that I'm a parent, I'm a coach, and I'm a player. And I come from all three different angles. As a parent, it's been the worst one for me, because I understand that it's frustrating to watch my kids in a situation and not be able to solve the if I didn't know what I know about tennis, I'd be even 10 times more frustrated. So if there's parents out there that are frustrated that you want your son or daughter to get to another level, there's something missing. They're not understanding what the problem is, like Ben talked about. They're not receiving the information. And then thirdly, they're not getting the advice to how to solve it. Or fourth, which we hope is not the case, that they're just darn stubborn and they just, want to do it their way, right? If that's the case, then you need somebody else to break that down. But this is what Ben and I are doing. We're on this mission to change this in kids' lives. We really want to make a difference. We want this to people out there to understand that there are solutions. And if your son or daughter has any, aspirations to play, college tennis, even pro tennis, and you're feeling this frustration on your end, I think you need to call us and you need to email us, because you come in for a couple days and we're going to show you the plan to get you better for sure. So, and I will do this. I will tell you 100% that Ben, you come into Zinc Tennis for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days, and your son or daughter doesn't get like ridiculous amount better, and you don't understand that this process is going to really make them a different type of player, we give you your money back 100%. You don't charge us for that week. That's how confident that we are that we have the system to change this. So again, we're putting these vlogs out there for just give you information, but understand that we do have the solutions. We have the recipe to make this happen. And if you need our help, even if you feel like you can't come in and you need our help to find a coach that can help you do this, we'll help you do that too. It doesn't have to be us, but we have to find the right person, because we have to change the game of tennis and the way the kids are receiving the information and doing something about it. We have to change this definitely around the world. And if we don't, then we're going to see kids just stay at the same level, which we're seeing a lot in what we do.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us again. We have a lot more coming your way. We're working on these webinars, so if you have topics that you would like to see us discuss or cover, please leave us a note in the YouTube channel or Facebook or Twitter, whatever you see us on. But we just thank you so much for your support, and we're excited to bring these things to you. Have an awesome day.